the peak of his career, Adidja Azim Palmer, otherwise known as Vybz Kartel, was known as the king of dancehall. However, just as he was on the verge of an opportunity so big it would change his legacy forever, he was hit with the biggest surprise of his entire life and sentenced to life in prison. How did a random DJ from Portmore become arguably the most influential man in Jamaica?
Addy me daddy, free up world boss.
And more importantly, is he innocent or guilty of his crimes? Well, to answer these questions, we have to go all the way back to 2008 when Vybz Kartel would have the biggest beef of his entire career that got so big and caused so much violence in real life that the literal Jamaican government and Prime Minister had to step in and intervene. The feud that would be known as the Gully Gaza War was between Vybz Kartel and another artist that was rising so quickly in the game, he had people wondering if he was about to take Vybz Kartel's position. This man's name was Mavado. Mavado started out in the background of the music industry, writing songs for other artists and taking other behind-the-scenes roles. But all of that would change when he decided to drop his first ever single in 2005, and it became an instant hit. Ever since then, every song that he has ever dropped had made him more and more popular, and the people took to him so much that he was being looked at as the new version of what Vybz Kartel was when he had just came on the scene. To make matters worse, Mavado was a protege of Bounty Killer and a very strong member of the Alliance, the same alliance that Kartel had fallen out with just a few years before. After leaving the Alliance, in the songs Kartel would drop, you could find lyrics where he would occasionally diss the members on the Sykes, but it was never anything too obvious. But eventually, these disses grew more and more, and it seemed as if Kartel had started targeting Mavado directly. Eventually, Mavado seemed to have had enough of the subliminal warfare, and as bright and brawling as he could possibly be, he released a 3-minute diss track aimed at Vybz Kartel titled New Name for Informer, Mr. Palmer. And so the audience had no mistake as to who he was talking about. In the song, he accused Kartel of being an informant for the police, along with a number of other very disrespectful things. And of course, in true Kartel fashion, he wasted no time in responding with another song called Mafrado. The warfare of these two giants going at it, along with the fact that they each had superstars who were sworn enemies on their team, Bounty Killer with Mavado and Kartel with Beenie Man, the warfare got so big that it split the country into two factions. The Gully side, representing Mavado's place of origin, Cassava Peace, which is located on the side of a gully in Kingston, and Gaza, which refers to Vybz Kartel's home community in Portmore. The war between Gully and Gaza got so intense in the music that, I kid you not, real violence in real life started to take place between the fans of each side. And you could see Gully and Gaza graffiti starting to pop up in random places, and people took their supposed affiliation to either side extremely seriously. It was to the point that several shootings started to take place, and even tourists were being attacked in certain places for playing Mavado's music in Gaza territory. Police even investigated several schools where vendors could be seen selling explicit material supporting either side, showing gory and blood-ridden images to the children of either artist holding the severed head of the other artist and other disgusting depictions. The war between the sides of Gully and Gaza got so bad that the literal government had to decide that they were going to get involved, and in March 2007, an official press conference was organized with many police present to have Vybz Kartel and Mavado publicly declare that their beef was over. Imagine one music beef will get so bad so till the government have to step in bad, bro. So you know, say them man the thing different. Now this period of peace lasted for a while, but of course, I think we know damn well say that never did a go last. And shortly after, they were right back at it again, flinging diss track after diss track after diss track. The animosity was so high that naturally everybody in the dancehall community was expecting that this would be the main clash of that year's upcoming Sting. And of course, they were absolutely right. In one of the most iconic nights of dancehall history, Adidja Palmer could be seen walking onto the stage fully clad in camouflage uniform, while Mavado was seen dressed as a police officer. The two clashed back and forth for what seemed like an eternity, until it eventually ended when Mavado walked off the stage. This is what led the majority of the Gaza fans to say that Kartel won the clash. However, of course, the Mavado fans were not having it, as they believed that Mavado was the true winner of the clash. And just like that, we were right back where we started, with Gully vs Gaza blazing with tensions hotter than were ever seen before. With even more violence popping up in the streets yet again, it was to nobody's surprise that the government decided it was time to officially end this once and for all. And so on December 8, 2009, the Prime Minister himself, Bruce Golding, stepped in to intervene in this musical beef and summoned Vybz Kartel and Mavado in the same room for a public broadcast, where many thought that there was a good chance they still didn't like each other. But of course, they did what they had to do for the camera. The government saw this beef as such a big issue that they implemented certain conditions to be followed just to ensure that the beef was sealed once and for all. And surprisingly, the two artists actually left all the previous controversy behind and surprisingly decided to move on with their lives. But did they really move on with their lives though? Or did they just become more preoccupied with more pressing matters? Because just a year later, Mavado's son was charged and convicted of murder, which led to a long string of events that ultimately ended with Mavado leaving Jamaica. And Kartel? Well, if him did think Mavado did have fame legal situation bad, he had no idea what was about to come his direction and ruin his life as he knew it forever. After the massive popularity of the Gully Gaza War, Vybz Kartel was on such a legendary trajectory that he was now being seen as the new king of dancehall. He was dropping hit after hit after hit, with songs like Rampin' Shop debuting on the American Billboard Hot 100. His song Clarks, which popularized the shoe brand to the point where most Jamaican students to this day still wear Clarks as part of their daily uniform. Go-Go Club, which went on to take over the music industry 15 years later, the song Virginity, Ben's Punani, You and Him There, and many other songs that would be considered solidified pieces of Jamaican culture that basically every Jamaican to some extent grew up hearing or being affected by in some way. Vybz Kartel became so big that when he started bleaching his skin, starting the change from what the fans know as Black Kartel, which is pre-bleaching, to White Kartel, he was so big that when he started bleaching, thousands and thousands of his fans started bleaching as well, just to follow in his example. This man even released his own brand of cake soap just for people bleach, and it literally sell out like wildfire. Now of course, the mainstream Jamaican media saw this almost Michael Jackson-like level of Jamaican popularity and decided that they needed to cash in. This was when Kartel was offered one of the biggest opportunities of his life, when he was offered his very own reality TV show called Teacher's Pet, where he would live in a house with 20 hot sexy girls as they would all try to compete for his affection. Only God knows how big this show would have gotten, as many years later we would see other people like Blueface use this format to make millions of dollars. However, like I said, only God knows, because unfortunately for Vybz Kartel, on September 29, 2011, he was arrested by the local authorities for possession of cannabis. And just 5 days later, the network that was going to broadcast the show would announce that the show had been cancelled. Now of course, this was very sad for Kartel, but if he knew what was about to come after this, he would have been begging God to let the loss of his show be the worst thing that came out of this event, because everything was about to get so much worse for Adidja Palmer than he, his fans, or even the entire country of Jamaica could have ever imagined. About a week after the arrest of Vybz Kartel, on October 3, 2011, the police, seemingly out of nowhere, upgraded Kartel's charges from possession of weed all the way up to murder. This was because he was being accused of allegedly ending the life of a music producer from Portmore who went by the name of Barrington Burton. As Kartel awaited trial for these charges, he released a book called The Voice of the Jamaican Ghetto, telling his fans that Babylon can incarcerate the messenger, but not the message. Fans held on to the hope that he may be innocent. But that became even harder when not long after, the government came right back around and hit him with another charge for the second-degree murder of Clive Lizard Williams. Kartel continued with the narrative that he was innocent and simply being set up by the Jamaican government because he was just too influential in the country and they were threatened by him. This kept fans active, begging for his release, and it only added to their fire when the Barrington-Burton case verdict was reached and Kartel was deemed not guilty. Now this was a solid victory for Kartel, but boy, was it far from what he needed to fix the situation as a whole, because the case with Lizard was looking a lot more complicated. You see, the reason the jury had Kartel as the man who killed Lizard wasn't just based off some loose speculation or some association to a similar gang. What connected Addy so close to the murder was when they initially arrested him just for the weed, they were able to seize his cell phone, and on this cell phone, they were surprised to find mountains and mountains of evidence to suggest that he was responsible for other crimes. And as the police discovered a series of crazily incriminating text messages and voice notes, it gave them strong reason to believe that he was involved. In fact, the most famous text out of this exchange that was even broadcasted to TVJ was, "Between me and you, a chop will chop up the lizard boy fine and dash him away. As long as we're alive, them can never find him." Now of course, if you see something as specific and insane as this on somebody's phone, you aga think say them did have something for do with it, at least. However, during the trial, his lawyer and his team fought tooth and nail to say that the text messages were altered after the fact and therefore should not be admissible in court.
She also said the electronic file lifted from Kartel's phone was modified 3 hours after the device was seized by a top police investigator.
However, in the end, it didn't even end up mattering, because once they heard the voice notes on Kartel's phone, it was basically over for him and there was no coming back. This was his voice in 4K talking, and there was nothing anybody could say to deny it. AI DVD exist them time. Now before I play what Kartel said, just know say shoes are one code name will refer to guns and lace is a code name will refer to bullets. Cool? Cool. In the first voice note, Kartel can be heard saying that Lizard had lost 2 of his shoes, and if him never get them back by 8 o'clock, something very, very bad was going to go down.
Hombre, they don't know it's a blood clot Lizard and we. I will call my phone today and tell me, say, them can't find the 2 blood clot new shoes them when me give them dog. So them lock them in our house. Side of all feet where I build up dog in a blood clot house, I lock 2 shoes and can't find my bum buckler shoes, bridging. And I come tell me, fuck me is that. I just tell them, say, make sure I get my shoes by 8 o'clock in a bad man. Batty boy, them I tell me, say, they can't find 2 of my shoes in a dog. I kill one of them, you know, I give them till 8 o'clock to get one bum buckler shoes. As a dead blood clot, man. That, you know.
The voice notes were being sent as part of a conversation between Kartel and one of his associates, Problem Child. And this is what Problem Child had to say in response to Kartel's frustration.
I want to tell you, man, them do it already, you know. They make them get no more chance to do that again, you know. I tell you straight, you know. I bust anytime after 8 and a man again a good talk on it, Dan. Bust off a man head and here we go do. You got bust off a man that live down there, and one of the strange man down there. 2 man that you got bust off one time. You can't afford for so much things that get missed, madam. A joke thing.
The situation appeared to be that since Lizard had misplaced 2 of the guns, Kartel and Problem Child had suspected him of having sold them to an external party.
And the woman can tell her instantly, say, the boy will go country where they move the shoes for sell them, move the shoes them for sell them in a dog.
And in order to maintain their street cred, they could never just sit back and allow something like this to slide.
My Dan, don't let them get too comfortable neither, you know. That can reach him back in the night or a morning and for them back on the hands, just a man to get wet up. Not to get too comfortable because them going like them one style blood clot man thing. My Dan, them boy enough to sleep all in them beds 9 hours a night and them supposed to pray a bag of thing them for up. Not sleep for no man until the thing them forward, my Dan.
The exchange continues until Kartel says this and then goes off the grid for a while.
Real thing bad man. I'm a real bumbucker thing, dog. Big woman thing. Yeah, I hear about it, man.
After this, some time passes and Problem Child links Kartel for an update on the situation.
My dad, what the program? Don't hear from yesterday, and some of I pray and I wonder what I go.
Same thing as the rest of man. The boy, him take the thing them dog, but the boy mama up the dog. Dash me, I make the man them dash away now, bro.
Now, just to confirm, Lizard's mother did not actually end up being dashed away, and actually ended up becoming one of Kartel's lifelong enemies, begging and pleading for his death in exchange for what happened to her son.
Me picnic never do him nothing. Me picnic never do him nothing. Me say, him a go dead and cancer go kill him in there. Him a go tan there.
But back to the story. The two continue exchanging words and frustrations about not being able to find the misplaced shoes until Kartel says to Problem Child,
Yeah, go on things, man. You don't have to say nothing, man. Just listen.
And then radio silence. A few days later, Problem Child hits up Kartel while he's in the middle of getting a new tattoo and asks him about some very interesting news that he had just come across.
I got a problem, child. Me there put on a tattoo star. How you just see tattoo? I'm a bride of Chucky, man.
I hear the Lizard and the new boy, my name Browns. Two of them here to get dashed away, you see me? Be a man a call me and ask me if me here, you know. You see me? And a nigga from Night Town just called me a while ago and say, 2 man get dashed away for the end. So me I said to him, say, me I behave like me don't know who him attack, you see me?
Yo, tell me exactly where you hear, bad man. Come on, where I go on. So who them say dash them way?
Out of the blues, me just hear the man and say, yo, dash a Lizard in me. I say, blood clot. But me I say to myself, Lizard get dash me not hear from you.
On top of this, there were also messages from Lizard himself to his girlfriend, who was begging her to call the police because he feared that Kartel was about to kill him, and she said that he sounded like he was having a breakdown in fear of his life. And perhaps the most damning of all was the video footage that was leaked of Kartel and his associates preparing for what they were going to do to Lizard once he stepped into the house.
This can kill him. But you have to swing it right and make it catch me. Yeah. No, you may say no. Okay, no, you can lie. I'll stab you in the neck. That could have seen. I see my boy now.
Yo, you hear me say? I want hold him down. I'm going to cut it short.
Yeah.
Now, with everything we just saw, I'm not gonna lie, even from a completely unbiased perspective, I have to say this is insane. Even hardcore Gaza fans had their opinions changed by watching this. And I guess the jury did too, because after all of the evidence that came to light and hearing Kartel talk about threatening to kill Lizard, why he was going to do it, the video footage, the text messages of Lizard to his girlfriend, and everything that came up about how Lizard's body was allegedly discarded afterwards, the jury decided to rule guilty. And on the 4th of April 2014, after the longest recorded trial in Jamaica's entire history, the king of dancehall himself, Adidja Palmer, was sentenced to life in prison. But of course, regardless of him being found guilty in court, in people's minds, that had nothing to do with the music. Many people naively thought that this would be the end of Kartel's career. But of course, being arguably the most influential man in Jamaica at the time, there was no way those prison guards were not bumping his music behind closed doors. I mean, everybody loved Vybz Kartel. And so it was no surprise that new music was still regularly being uploaded, and is to this day still regularly being uploaded to his YouTube channel. I mean, that just goes to show you there is really levels to this thing. And if you want to hear the full story of how Vybz Kartel got to that level in the first place, watch the part 1 of this video on your screen right now that shows the entire life story of Vybz Kartel and how he became the king of dancehall. And of course, as always, the dancehall has been decoded.